Welcome back to We Married the Family, the place for all your in-law issues, questions, and explorations as a daughter-in-law and as a couple. Today's episode is about a very common struggle, something that every daughter-in-law questions: whether you can really ever feel at home whilst living with your in-laws. Some of you have left a place of comfort and now find yourself anxious and struggling to rest and relax. Some of you might never have felt safe even in your childhood homes, and now continue to walk on eggshells. Some of you might have learnt to escape home emotionally and physically, and now find yourself in that same pattern. Some of you are really trying to be comfortable, but just can't seem to fully let go. So let's go into this further and see what's happening. When a woman gets married and moves into her husband's family home, she's adjusting to so many big changes, including the house itself. Moving in itself is really disorientating. The foundations of your life are shifting, and it's not that you're moving with somebody, you're doing this by yourself. And it's not that you're moving into a place that you've chosen for any particular reason. You're moving for marriage. You're not moving into a blank canvas. You're moving into an already established home, your husband's home. Usually it's his childhood home where he spent a considerable amount of his life, and is completely new to you as a daughter-in-law and as his wife. You've moved from your home, usually where you've grown up and spent your childhood, the familiar colours, the smells and routines, the comings and goings of the space, and you find yourself orienting to a whole new space that you would have liked to call home. Most daughter-in-laws never really feel at home, and that can be very unsettling in itself. You're waking up every morning in this house, you're living here, you come back from work to this space. You might be raising your children here, but you don't feel that you can call it home. Most of the women I've worked with try really hard to feel at home. They think that's what they should be doing, that's what they should be feeling, a connection to this place. And when that doesn't happen, they doubt themselves and criticize and blame themselves. But I'm telling you now, it's normal to not feel at home at your in-laws. And rather than blaming yourself for not having this feeling, recognize your truth and start exploring what home does mean to you. Home isn't necessarily a building with four walls. The space is part of it, but it can also be a feeling. Feeling at home could be when you're with a particular person. If your husband feels like home to you, just being around him and spending time with him will help you to relax and nestle into a sense of safety. Maybe being in a certain city feels like home. It would be great if you could live there, but if that's not possible, you can visit it or hold its memory close to you. One place that I absolutely love and feel a really special connection with is by the ocean, but I'm not going to move there, not yet anyway, so I've been making lots of weekly visits to the water, and it's been so energizing. Home is somewhere that you feel that you belong. It's somewhere or something you have a connection with that gives you a sense of grounding, and a place from where you can orient yourself and grow. But without a safe space to decompress, to grow, to unwind, your psychological well-being can suffer. So why do so many women end up without this space? There's a much deeper layer to this topic which goes into our own family histories of migration and displacement. Those of you whose parents settled in the States or the UK or somewhere else, moving from their birth country to a new country, they would have had to leave behind so much. Their loved ones, the land, their own home, things they loved and cherished, places they made memories, friends they had. Many of our parents don't feel at home in the country that they've moved to. It takes a lot to establish roots and create a home. And when there's trauma of migration and displacement, either from war or from family duties, how does a person establish or re-establish a sense of home again? For some, this is a lifelong search. The unresolved trauma, the grief, the rage that our family systems carry can play a really big part in struggling to feel a sense of belonging and connection to a new space, even for their children and grandchildren. So there's a big intergenerational component to this as well. If we think of our mothers in particular, for many of our mothers, marriage was a reason that they moved. They likely would have maybe been young, they would have been finding their own way in this foreign land with new people. Some of them might never have worked, some of them might have struggled to learn the language and to make friends or be part of a community, so their house became a place of refuge and a place of survival. Even then, they continued life with a self-reliance, they got on with things, They persevered even through the struggles that they would have faced inside the home. But we know it's very common for South Asian women, especially the older generations, to have denied themselves and put themselves on the back burner. Some of the things that you're feeling wouldn't even be considered as valid issues because your mothers didn't have the privilege of being able to feel and name what they were experiencing internally. They've suppressed and cut off from their feelings. It's why so many of you feel like your mothers don't understand what you're going through and find it hard to talk to them about your own experiences. So, this feeling of displacement, the struggle to find your place, to feel at home, comes from the move that you've made through marriage. There's a sense of being uprooted, possibly very similar experiences to your mother or grandmother. In a culture that is patriarchal as well, a woman is expected to follow the rules that support men and their privilege. As a wife and daughter-in-law who's living with in-laws, you have very little, if any, choice in where you end up living, in where you move to and how long you live there with your in-laws. But your husband does. And in this culture, it's really hard for people to acknowledge a woman's voice and her needs. This is the impact of patriarchy, which is also still very alive in our homes and in your experience of home. A sense of ownership comes into this as well, where you're living with in-laws and others might be providing for you. So your own work comes into question and your finances come into question, like, why do you need to work? Or what are you doing with your money? It can give people a sense of ownership and entitlement over you if you're financially dependent on them. And this impacts the men too, by the way. For a man to be living with his parents in a home that his parents have bought and paid off can be quite infantilizing. Both of you, but especially you as daughter-in-law, can feel like you have little ownership over anything. And this can really create power imbalances between you and your partner or you and your in-laws. The ownership of a woman's agency, her time, and freedom is also rooted in patriarchy, where others have more control over a woman's life and choices than she does. And it's in service of the men. It makes their lives easier. Your husband hasn't had to move anywhere. He's not let go of his home, his job, his friendships. So these elements that are still running through our culture, the traumas, the displacement, the moving for marriage, and the patriarchal influences of that, when you see this, you can see how your experience is part of something that's a lot deeper and more widespread. And here you are in a space that's unfamiliar, where the rules are not yours, a space that belongs to someone else that you don't have much control over, where you feel like an outsider. And all of this contributes to a sense of emotional homelessness. Let's move from the bigger, wider picture to a more narrower picture and look at this from a psychological perspective about your relationship with yourself. Because home is also about your own body and your own soul. Think about whether your behavior and patterns in your physical space mirror something about your relationship to yourself. Just notice what you do and how you do things in the space. Are you always trying to be somewhere else? Are you rushing around all the time and barely able to catch a breath? Are you overindulging in something or taking a lot from others but not giving much back in return? Are you focusing a lot on what's not working? Do you move slowly and quietly in the space? Do you hide all your things in cramped cupboards and struggle to clear out old belongings? The way you relate to your external space, even at your in-laws, is telling you something about yourself. Your body is your first home, and it's holding a lot of the things from your life before you got married. It's very possible that what it's feeling now is a familiar feeling to you, or a familiar pattern that runs through your family. It can be tricky to get to these deeper layers when the day-to-day stuff feels really big and easier to focus on, so it will take some real introspection and reflection, but just be curious about your behavior, patterns, and your habits. Initially, when I ran my groups, we discussed the possibilities of making your in-laws' home your own. And I still do this because there are things that you can do to facilitate more grounding and comfort in this space. But what I also do now is acknowledge the fact that your in-laws' home is their home. And often it won't feel like yours because it's not. I know some people won't agree with this, but those people are usually not daughter-in-laws. They're usually men who think that this type of recognition is divisive. But it's the truth. A home is a space that feels safe, that brings you security, that provides room to relax. A place where you can just be. But your in-laws' home might never give you this sense of home. It's in a lot of things, like never being able to walk around without your hijab on. like having to look presentable every morning instead of just coming downstairs in your pajamas, like not just lounging around on the sofa watching your favorite TV show, in having relatives and your in-laws' friends coming and going without any discussion or notice. A home is a space where you have privacy, security, and control, but realistically, how many women have that at their in-laws' house? If you're living with people who you don't get on with or who are mistreating you, or if you're feeling on edge, anxious, invisible, or ignored, that's not going to feel like your own home. Nobody would choose to live in a space like that. Yet so many women are expected to, and so many women do. But this house that you're in has a whole history before your arrival, a place that houses the memories of your husband and his family. I'm not going to tell you that you need to feel at home here, because you might never feel that. And that's something that you're going to need to grieve, along with the dream of having your own home and dressing it the way that you've always wanted to, unless you move. But now that you are in this space, it can evolve. Some women might have more influence when it comes to this than others, but there are things that you can do to feel more at home. You can bring your energy, your creativity, your vision into this space if the family are flexible. And that is a big if, because I know for so many women this is where you struggle, and there's always a push and pull, a back and forth with this, and it can be really exhausting to try and keep pursuing this comfort in the space that you're now in. And a lot of women stop trying. You can participate in discussions about renovations and redecorating. You can rearrange furniture and add new things, maybe a new lick of paint, a new light fixture, a new shoe rack, or a room spray. This goes a long way in helping you feel a sense of ownership, belonging, and connection to your place. If you are restricted and you face difficulty from the family with your involvement, then you can think about which areas you do have control over, like your own room, and make that your sanctuary. The physical side is one aspect, but trying to build emotional comfort is another. Think about how you can bring more of yourself into the space. This could look like sharing your views more often, asking more questions, just taking up a little bit more space emotionally. So instead of feeling small and invisible, you can start to feel like you're part of the space, part of the home, and part of the family. If you don't trust the people that you're around, or you've been hurt by them, then it is going to be hard to generate that emotional comfort. But give yourself time to grow into the space. Bring your own touch to it. Let yourself be known. Carve out corners that are yours so that you can see yourself reflected back as you walk around the house. You can negotiate routines and rhythms that are more reflective of who you are, like eating earlier in the evenings or going for walks after work. You can create new traditions, like decorating on Eid or having a weekend movie night or sleepovers with your nieces and nephews. Thinking about these things and putting them into practice will support a movement forward for you, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll feel completely at home. I know of women who have tried to make physical changes that have not been welcomed. A simple, harmless thing like adding a couple of plants to the house, which resulted in other people moving them or complaining about them. And if you're feeling unwelcomed by others, then obviously you're not going to feel at home in this place. And if that sense of home doesn't arrive, just know that you're not being ungrateful or disrespectful if you don't feel it. It's very common and actually normal to feel like this, because wanting to live life according to your rhythm is what's more natural, not shoehorning into other people's. But when you're living with in-laws, you do compromise your natural rhythm. So you will feel out of sorts until and if you can create a better flow. If you benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode and would like to work together, you can join my daughter-in-law's membership or book in for one-to-one or couples therapy with myself or another therapist.